So obviously we all know that Drew Brees just recently retired from the NFL, and to me, I'm not totally shocked. If you've been watching Drew Brees over the past couple of years, it's pretty clear that his skills had deteriorated a little bit. He's no longer really mobile at all. His arm strength has declined, and he's just not the same quarterback that he once was. The New Orleans Saints really struggled to push the football down the field in their passing game, and that was mainly because Drew Brees no longer was the same quarterback that he once was when he was in his prime, and he ultimately limited their offense. His lack of mobility and his inability to push the football down the field and to fit the ball in the tight windows really hurt the Saints offense. So I think that Drew Brees, look, he didn't have much left in the tank. He really has nothing left to gain as far as his legacy goes. The only thing that really would enhance his legacy is winning another Super Bowl. You know, if he won a second Super Bowl, then that would put him in a class, you know, that he's probably not in right now. But I don't think that Drew Brees is actually capable of leading a team to a Super Bowl. You need a whole lot around Drew Brees at this stage in his career for him to win a Super Bowl, just because he's a physically limited quarterback. He's not what he once used to be. So Drew Brees made the right decision to retire. Now, I want to talk about Drew Brees' legacy and things of that nature, because Drew Brees, to me, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I classify him as the savior of New Orleans. He's an absolute legend, one of the most prolific quarterbacks of all time, one of the most efficient quarterbacks of all time, arguably the most accurate quarterback of all time. Drew Brees, he's the real deal. And as far as the quarterbacks in his era, the only quarterbacks I think that played in his era that were better than him were Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Aaron Rodgers. And as far as where Drew Brees ranks among all-time great quarterbacks, like, people are going to ask me, where does Drew Brees rank all time? I've got Drew Brees right outside the top 5 as far as the greatest quarterbacks of all time. For me right now, the 6 greatest quarterbacks of all time are Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, John Elway, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees. I went from best to worst, by the way. So, number 1, Tom Brady. Number 2, Joe Montana. Number 3, Peyton Manning. Number 4, John Elway. Number 5, Aaron Rodgers. Number 6, Drew Brees. I have Drew Brees ahead of Brett Favre. I have him ahead of Dan Marino. I have him ahead of Steve Young. You know, Dan Marino was more talented than Drew Brees. So was Brett Favre. But Drew Brees was more precise than Brett Favre. Didn't throw as many interceptions as Brett Favre did. Really put the teams that he had in New Orleans on his back, whereas Brett Favre always had pretty good teams around him, you know. I think that Dan Marino is more talented than Drew Brees, but Drew Brees has the Super Bowl win. Dan Marino does not, so I put Drew Brees over Dan Marino. To me, Steve Young was a good quarterback, but Drew Brees, his longevity is what puts him over Steve Young, and to me, he's just as accurate of a quarterback as a guy like Steve Young. And while Troy Aikman, Roger Staubach, and Terry Bradshaw were able to win multiple Super Bowls, I think Drew Brees as an individual player is a better overall quarterback than those guys. He may not have the arm strength of a Terry Bradshaw, you know, may not be quite as nimble or as mobile as a Roger Staubach, but I'd take Drew Brees over those guys if I were to start a franchise. And I guarantee you, if you put Drew Brees on those Pittsburgh Steelers teams or those Dallas Cowboys teams where he doesn't have to be the focal point of the offense 24/7, where he can hand the football off to great running backs, you know, where he has star wide receivers, a great offensive line, a great coaching staff, an elite defense, where he can at times just game manage his way to Super Bowls, then I think Drew Brees would have more Super Bowl rings than he has right now, okay? Drew Brees for a long time had to carry some very, very bad teams in New Orleans. And I understand that over the past, 4 seasons or so, he's had a great roster around him. So the fact that he was not able to win a second Super Bowl is very disappointing to me, just because he had such a great roster in the later stages of his career. But Drew Brees, he's still a great all-time quarterback to me. And in fact, Drew Brees, like I said earlier, he's the guy that saved the New Orleans Saints franchise, okay? Drew Brees, in his career in New Orleans, played for 15 years, won 62% of his games, had a 142-86 win-loss record, so 142 wins, 86 losses. He had 9 playoff wins. He won a Super Bowl. And like I said, before Drew Brees got to New Orleans, the Saints were horrible. They were an awful football team. They were garbage. To put in context how bad the Saints were before Drew Brees got there, the 15 years before Drew Brees got there, they only won 45% of their games. They had 0 playoff wins and 8 losing seasons. He was asked to carry that franchise from day number 1. Okay, he's had to carry a lot of bad defenses. He never played in the cupcake division. You know, Matt Ryan and Cam Newton were in his division for the most part throughout his career, and Cam Newton and Matt Ryan have been to Super Bowl. So he didn't play in the AFC East like Tom Brady. He didn't play in the NFC North like Aaron Rodgers. You know, he always had to play in a very tough division, you know. And I've always said, Drew Brees, he changed the game of football from this perspective. We probably don't hear much about Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield or Russell Wilson if it wasn't for Drew Brees, because, you know, there's this myth and theory out there that, oh, quarterbacks, they have to be 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds, big, strong arm. You can't win with a short quarterback. But Drew Brees proved all the naysayers wrong. I know Doug Flutie's a short quarterback that has some success in the NFL, but Drew Brees won a Super Bowl, okay? You know, barely 6-foot-tall quarterbacks rarely win Super Bowls, okay? So look, Drew Brees, he was a 2nd-round pick out of Purdue. He didn't have the strongest arm, and a lot of people doubted him. They said, man, is Drew Brees big enough and tall enough to play the position? That's a big reason why he wasn't a 1st-round pick, you know? But he paved the way for guys like Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray, because NFL scouts, they said, if Drew Brees can do it, maybe Baker Mayfield can do it. Maybe Russell Wilson can do it. Maybe Kyler Murray can do it. And it really gave those guys an opportunity to really showcase their skill sets, because if it were not for Drew Brees and him being living proof that you can win a Super Bowl and win big with a quarterback that's not 6'5", I don't know if those guys get their opportunities. And let's not forget, Drew Brees was not supposed to have the career that he had. The Los Angeles Chargers, at the time, the San Diego Chargers, they bailed on Drew Brees. People thought that Drew Brees, after the Chargers bailed on him, that he was a bust. The Chargers chose Phillip Rivers over Drew Brees. Meanwhile, what does Drew Brees go on to do? Oh, Drew Brees goes on to go to 13 Pro Bowls. He led the NFL in passing yards 7 times in his career. 4 times he's led the NFL in touchdown passes. 6 times he's led the NFL in completion percentage. He's a 2-time pass rating leader. He's the all-time completion percentage leader. And right now, Drew Brees has over 80,000 passing yards in his career. He's 1st all-time in career passing yards as I speak today. Tom Brady's probably going to pass him by, but I argue that he's going to probably be 1st or 2nd in pretty much every major statistical category when it's all said and done for a long, long time. And right now, Drew Brees has 571 career touchdown passes. Okay, he's 2nd all time to Tom Brady. Okay, so when you look at the big picture, Drew Brees is 1st, 2nd, or 3rd in pretty much all these major categories, and he's put up a lot of great numbers. And I know people don't like to look at stats all the time. I'm not the biggest stats guy, but statistics are representations of what has happened throughout history. And the numbers sometimes don't lie. You know, sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And when you put together 15 to 20 years of greatness, I don't think the numbers lie, okay? Now, the biggest knock on Drew Brees throughout his career was that he was never the best quarterback in the NFL at any point. He never won a regular season MVP. To me, that does matter in his evaluation of where he ranks among all-time great quarterbacks. Just because if I'm going to put you in the top 5 all-time, I think you at some point need to have been the best quarterback in the sport. And Drew Brees, he doesn't quite meet that threshold for me. And I do think Drew Brees' numbers have been a product of him playing in a dome for most of his career, of him, you know, getting together with Sean Payton, who's one of the best offensive minds in NFL history. You know, Drew Brees doesn't have the greatest arm. He never was a great outdoor quarterback. And for Drew Brees' career, he's 9-9 in the playoffs. He's a 500 quarterback in the playoffs. And in the playoffs, that's where it matters most. So, Drew Brees never was able to capture a second Super Bowl trophy. So that will always be the biggest indictment on his legacy. But Drew Brees to me is still an all-time great legend. The other thing I will say is Drew Brees, he didn't make the playoffs all that often. People forget, Drew Brees, he's missed the playoffs 9 times in his career. He's played in 20 seasons. So nearly half of Drew Brees' career was him spent at home watching quarterbacks in the playoffs. Okay, so that's a big reason why I don't have Drew Brees in my top 5 as far as all-time great quarterbacks, just because he was never quite the best quarterback in the sport. He never was able to really carry, bad rosters and bad defenses like a John Elway, like a Aaron Rodgers, like a Peyton Manning. Sometimes you need a lot around Drew Brees for him to win, okay? But Drew Brees is the absolute legend. To me, I don't think you can name any more than about 5, maybe 6 or 7 quarterbacks that are better than him. I have him rated as the 6th best quarterback of all time as I speak today. And Drew Brees is an absolute legend. He will definitely forever be missed. He forever changed the game of football. And Drew Brees, to me, goes down as the savior of New Orleans. Drew Brees had an amazing career, and today he deserves to be celebrated, no doubt about it. Congratulations, Drew Brees, on a great 20-year career. You're a Hall of Famer for sure, no doubt about it. First ballot as well. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.